Hey, nice to see you too. We're catching up on our older years here in college.
That is right. So the first one here, and I can't believe this.
I know.
Oops, I was kind of wrong.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the cicada issue. I don't know if you remember, we were talking about people putting bags on trees. And I wondered about that because the adults don't have mouth parts, so they can't eat the leaves. But what I found out, and long story short, I had been spraying some herbicide on a farm, and the guy calls me. He says, hey, I think you had some drift. My trees look really weird. I said, can you come out and take a look at this? And I said, yeah, sure. And oh, boy, here we go. So I went out, and what I found was the entire tree wasn't dead, but the patch is about anywhere from the size of a 16-inch softball to a basketball where the leaves were dead. And I mean, they were just dead. There wasn't any speckling. You know, the vegetation hadn't fallen off. They were just dead. So I said, well, yeah, maybe it was drift. And so he called me about 3 days later, and he says, something weird's going on out here. He said, a mile away from where you were spraying, the same thing's showing up. He said, can you come out again? So I said, yeah, sure. So I had remembered that there was a cicada, huge number of cicadas in this woods where all this was happening. And this is a big woods, probably, I don't know, 50 acres. And so we're driving around. He goes, look at that tree over there. Look at this one. And it was on all sides of the trees. And I hadn't noticed that before, so it wasn't herbicide drift. So I said, well, stop the vehicle. Let's take a look at the end of the branches where all this was happening. So I sliced a branch off, and at the very end, about 6 to 8 inches from the tip, there were little slits in the bark where the bark was real thin. And what was occurring, the cicadas, it was the females, were making slits in the bark to lay eggs. So they were killing the leaf, the end of the branches off. So you go out to that farm today, and it looks like somebody took a blowtorch and just went boof, 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 all over in the tree.
Oh my goodness.
All these fried leaves. And it was basically from the cicadas. So I take back that they weren't going to do any wrong. So you folks that were putting bags on those trees, you're probably doing the right thing.
Well, there you go. And head to the trees, our next talking point.
Yeah, with the river so high, if you can get onto the river with your boat, which it's kind of dangerous right now with all the stuff floating down, but if you could, you might want to head to the timber. There's a lot of flooded timber out there right now, and that's excellent fishing. Those fish head in there because they know there's fresh food coming up, and if you can get in there with a slip bobber and either a minnow or a night crawler, you can really clean up right now. But be very careful trying to get out there. Maybe the best thing to do is you can get a little canoe or kayak, launch it from the shore if you have access from the shore, and just use that to go in amongst it instead of going out into the channel. In fact, is the river still closed up by Dubuque? I know it was there for a while.
I wouldn't doubt it. You know, of course, I see the Mississippi, the Wapsie, and the Cedar. What's the Rock River looking like?
Actually, the Rock's not in too bad a shape. You know, it's a smaller watershed. It actually starts up by Horicon Marsh in Wisconsin, and they've been getting some rain, and it's been coming down, but it's nowhere near the state that the Mississippi's in right now. And I know the Wapsie's, it's still in flood stage too.
And Cedar too, my goodness.
Cedar, oh boy.
Yeah, it's very high over that ways.
But if you can get out there, good fishing in those trees right now.
So aren't they cute? Now, you're not talking about me, are you?
I am.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I like I tell people, I have the face for radio, not TV. So anyway, the turkey poults, they're out and about, they're moving around. Had a friend of mine that was out mowing a fire break the other day, and he flushed a small flock of them. They actually could fly. They're about half the size of a pheasant right now, and they look like turkeys, but they're not colored like them at all, but they have those long necks, so, and you can tell they're turkeys. But they're out there. They're able to get around really well. The ones I saw couldn't quite fly yet, but he said the ones he saw flew right up into a tree and sat and looked at him. So they're out there. Be careful what you're doing. Looking good so far. The next thing that might affect them, though, is those crazy gnats out there. Some people call them buffalo gnats. They actually get so thick on the poults, they'll get into their eyes, and they get up into their nostrils and suffocate them. So if they can make it through that, I think they'll be in pretty good shape. So.
Okay, again, visiting with Dave Harris. We got another bug to talk about.
Yeah, the Japanese beetle. If you haven't noticed them already, one of the jobs I had in the last couple weeks here was actually spraying some shrubs out on a farm. I don't do landscape work, but I work out on farms, of course. And one of the things I was doing was spraying insecticide for Japanese beetles. American plum and hazelnut, or American filbert, same name, are very susceptible to it. Anything with real sweet sap, like grapevines, if you're growing grapes in your garden or if you have a vineyard, I would really be checking your grapevines, because they will just decimate grapevines. The white grub is where they originate from. So if you're digging around in your lawn or your yard, you see a grub that's, snow white with a brown head on it, that becomes a Japanese beetle eventually. And that's one of the treatments for them, is you go out and you treat your lawn for grubs. The problem with that is it kills everything else too that you might want. So, but you can put traps out. That's what I do, because they'll really go after my crab apples, and I'll put a trap on either side of the crab apples, and it actually does a pretty good job. And
now this next one, I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Iron chlorosis.
Okay.
And what it is if you have a pin oak, I've got a huge one in my front yard, great looking tree, grows very fast. The problem is if you don't treat it, it ends up looking like a banana. It's like a huge banana out there. It'll just turn completely bright yellow. And what it's doing is it's starving it for iron. So you have to treat it with a product called chelated iron. And what I did is I dug 4 holes right on the drip line where the branches are. And a couple times a year, I just get a liquid and pour in it. Then I put about 5 gallons of water in each hole too. And that does it. And it turns green. It stays green. I'll be due for another treatment probably into August, first part of September. But and you'll see this out in the wild a lot too. They're really susceptible to iron. Basically they can't get enough iron. And what the old timers used to do, they'd either bury a horseshoe at the base of the tree, or they'd take ungalvanized nails and pound into the tree. And that does it too, but I don't like pounding things into trees.
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of an iffy thing. But if your pin oak turns yellow, simple solution, just chelated iron. Like I said, I poured it around the base. Be very careful with that stuff, though, because it does stain you. If you get it on your clothes, you're never getting it out. So,
beware the does.
Yeah. Right now, the fawns have been dropped. Probably 99% of the does have dropped their fawns, and they're moving big time. It's not as bad as November when the bucks are chasing the does, but I'm starting to see dead deer on the side of the road. So there's car collisions. There's 2 reasons they're moving. One, they're looking for food, of course. The other thing is those gnats again and mosquitoes. That'll keep them on the move, and it can be really dangerous, especially first thing in the morning and early in the evening. If you got a wooded area that you drive through a lot, slow down. And if it's during the night, use your brights and watch for eyes, because they are still moving right now. So be careful.
We got a new employee to talk about.
Yeah. The SWCD in Morrison did hire someone. He's been there for probably a month now. And if you have a chance, stop in and say hi to him. And I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. But he's brand new.
That's how new he is.
Yeah, and he's from Clinton, too.
Oh, my goodness.
I want to say Brady, but that's not right, so I won't say his name. But yeah, stop in and say hi to him. I'm sure he'd like to, meet everybody out there. And I believe he graduated from the University of Northern Iowa. So, and they have a really good natural resources program up there. So I wish him luck. And I was hoping to get him over here today, but his schedule didn't allow. So
okay.
I'm going to drag him over here one of these days.
Okay. Well, all right. So what are some of the responsibilities of this guy?
Actually, he's got a lot, because he's covering parts of 3 jobs right now. He's doing what I used to do on the resource side. He's also kind of covering the receptionist or administrative coordinator's job, and eventually he's going to be doing some education too. So he's got a lot on his plate right now. So I wish him luck. I hope things turn out well for him. And like I said, if you're in the neighborhood, stop by and say hi to him.
All right. Again, wrapping things up with
Yep.
Dave Harrison. We got a couple more minutes here
You
yet,
bet.
Dave. So if you planted apple trees for pollinators and wildlife, but can't get the trees to produce, you got a couple of things you can do.
Yeah, I had this problem too, and part of my problem is I'm not as patient as I should be. And I had some experience with apple trees, but not a lot. So I asked a guy that had been growing apples for years, why aren't my trees producing? He says, well, one, they may not produce for 5 years. They'll sit there and they get their root growth going and they put on a lot of vegetation, but they don't produce apples. And he was right. So about in the 4th or 5th year, I started getting apples. But there's other things that you can do. If you're not sure what variety you planted, even if they're self-pollinators, it's not a bad idea to throw a yellow delicious or two out there and try to keep them within 20 to 30 feet of the other apples. Yellow delicious are one of the universal pollinators. Crab apples are the other species you can use, and it works real well. The other thing I started to do, and I got really good production too, is I started using neem oil on them as a spray. It's an organic compound. I think it comes from India. It's a nut that's ground up. But anyways, it's got an organic fungicidal effect and insecticidal effect too. So if you can spray them 2 or 3 times a year, that's what I do. Be very careful though that the temperature's under 85. The neem oil has some kind of weird effect if it gets hotter than that and you're spraying. But I just put like a teaspoon in a gallon, maybe 2, and spray away and coat them. And ever since I've been doing that, I've got better pollination, and my apple crop's a lot better too. On several farms that I work on.
Good to hear. Bring a pie in next time.
I might.
Illinois Turkey Survey is online.
Yeah, if you're in Illinois and you hunt turkeys and have been successful, a lot of times DNR will send you a request to do a report for them every month, and it's usually June, July, and August. They used to send you a postcard. Now you go online and report sightings by the numbers, the sex, and the age of the turkeys. And that's one way that they determine the permits per county. So in Illinois, it's a pretty important service, and if you get a request, I would go ahead and do it. It's very simple. It takes you 2 minutes to do the report online.
I think we're going to get through everything.
We're getting close.
Yeah, public land waterfall blind and date drawing.
Yeah, that time is coming up pretty quick for both federal and state. I'm not sure about Illinois or Iowa, but in Illinois, those are done online now. Most of the federal drawings, I think, are still in person. They used to have it up in Manny's, and there'd be 400 or 500 people show up for the blind drawings on Pool 13. And it's kind of fun. It's $10. It used to be $10. It's probably more now. But check the dates on that, because those are coming up real fast, and you don't want to miss them.
All right, and the final one, small land conservation tracts and taxes.
Yeah, in Illinois, one of the things you have to do if you have a small piece of property that's not associated with a farm, like a timber or a prairie or a wetland, and you're hunting it, you need to get a conservation plan on it. If you don't, your taxes are going to skyrocket, because it'll go from ag or conservation without a plan to a zoning for either residential or recreation. And I've had horror stories of people's taxes going up like 1,000%. And it's pretty dramatic when it goes from like $100 to $2,000 in 1 year.
Yeah, I would think so.
But get a plan. You have to have it done by a professional. DNR will come out and check it and look at the plan and okay it, and then file it with your county tax assessor, and you'll keep your taxes hopefully where they're at.
All right, very good. Appreciate you stopping in. People want to find out more. How can they best do that, Dave?
You can call the office and leave a message there at 815-772 2124 extension 3, or they can call me at 815-441-3088. And if I don't answer, please leave a message, because I get a lot of spam calls, and if I get a number I don't recognize, I won't return the call. So just leave a message, say, hey, I heard you on the radio, I need some help, or I have a question. I'll get back to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're listening to AM 1340 KROS, Clinton, Iowa.
FM 105.9.
And KROSradio.com.
This is Radio Iowa. The Mississippi River is still rising along much of eastern Iowa in Davenport, Muscatine, and Burlington, and it'll likely stay at major flood stage into next